Okay, so welcome to our sort of impromptu week 11 build presentation video. Just sort of really quick probably update on the progress that we made with the build so far. Yeah, a lot of gameplay functionality I suppose has gone in recently. A couple new assets, but a lot of the assets still have to be swapped in. On the art side, that's very quick and easy. On the audio side, it's slightly more challenging, but should still be relatively straightforward. Yeah, if I just start the build up just now, bear with me for a moment. Okay, so this is our sort of intro section here. We're going to have a couple of other things like a studio logo and stuff like that as well in the introduction. This is our title screen. We've got a settings menu here so we can adjust the difficulty. There's a volume slider as well, and then we can return back to the main menu screen. I think there's still some placeholder UI in there that just needs to be lined up, but that's still in place while we're testing and building. Then if we start the game, this is kind of Ewan's intro cutscene, so I'll go through this quite slowly using that sort of classic post-war comic style. Sort of explaining a little bit about the production process of whiskey making. This screen here, this is going to have some more art put into it later, but the sort of dialogue and introductory information is here as well. Just continuing through, just a little bit of context about the player sort of situation, the framing around where they are at. And then finally introducing the gameplay elements and what the player's role is here. And then we can start. So I'm running on a bigger monitor, so like I'm running on a high definition monitor, so things aren't quite in the right place. Turn this off real quick. So yeah, quickly to explain what's going on here, this number here at the top is indicating that the player is not following the instructions that they've got. So if we pop in here, we turn things on, move some buttons around, now you can see that this number here has stopped going down, it's stopped increasing. So that represents the fact that the player has followed their instructions correctly and is kind of like using enough energy to keep the production process going. And now if we go back in there and we turn it off, this number starts decrementing again. And then if we go back in and we move all the controls again, yep, it's back to this. So this is kind of a sort of very abstract representation. There's this sort of stacking negative number up here. But basically what this represents is that the player is being asked to do something, asked to supply energy to some aspect of the production process, and they're not doing that, so production output is being hit in some way. So this is one of our axes, and this number here, this is our sort of running count of joules of energy used. So this is our other axis for player performance. So you know, the thing of efficiency is you have to do enough to get what you need, but you need to use as little as possible. So by tracking these two separate things and sort of keeping track of the player's performance on both, we can then determine how efficient they're being and feed that back to the player at the end of the game. So this sort of sequence here of the player goes in. Well, I guess the full sequence is they go to this screen here. This is all placeholder artwork. This is all being changed. This also here, this UX is also being changed as well. That's in the works, just hasn't been implemented yet. But they'll go into the screen here. They'll get their instructions. They will. Wait, is this? That's bugged for me on my monitor because it's. As I say, I'm running on a 1440p monitor, which the game is not built for, unfortunately. But if I come back in, the player goes in here, they get their instructions, they come back out. They then adjust the controls in line with the instructions, and if ever they're sort of not supplying enough energy, this number here will start going down. And if they're ever supplying too much energy, that number will be tracked. It will be compared to a sort of optimal amount of energy that they should be using at the end of the game, and then their performance will sort of be assessed at the end of the game as a result of that. So right now we can see here the times at about 20 to 10 in the morning. The game will run right through until 5 p.m. and once that's done, the sort of mission ends and the player receives the feedback on their performance. So this will eventually stop when we get to 5 o'clock, but that'll take quite a while, and I wouldn't make you sit and wait through all that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really to go through today, though. I think that's the much of it, really. A lot of this is displayed in very abstract ways just now, but the sort of underlying systems are working. We've got a tool now that we can use to input objectives, so the sort of instructions that the player is getting wherever we want. We can adjust the time, we can adjust the room, we can adjust the values that we want the player to be hitting. So that's fully modular, so we can design entire levels out of that, thanks to the work that Cameron's been doing. Yeah, but sort of all the bones there for making things now are in place. There's final art assets still to go in. A lot of those, like Svetny and Ellen, have made a lot of progress there, but we've kind of just been really focusing on gameplay this week as opposed to polish. So some gameplay focused sprites have gone in, but otherwise a lot of the art assets are still waiting kind of to have their turn. Yeah, as for going forward, I think it's now we're at a stage where it's kind of constructing that sort of final, constructing the mission architecture, putting the final art and audio assets in, a little bit more framing and context for the player, a little bit more in the way of teaching tools to introduce mechanics and stuff like that for the uninitiated. Because obviously we as a team, we know the game very well and how it's supposed to work, but that won't be true for the player. Yeah, the end is kind of now in sight. Like, this was a very, very systems heavy project, as it turned out, and I think we as a team didn't really realize how challenging that was going to be, but now all of those systems have been constructed and are in place, so it's kind of just a case of putting all the assets in, constructing the missions, and then we're good to go. So I would say we're a bit behind schedule, relative to where we would be ideally, but we should be fine, I think, to make the final submission on time. We've just had other situations going on in people's individual lives as well, which have kind of thrown a spanner in the works, which obviously has happened to all the teams, but I think we've probably run below average in that regard, to use a kind of poker term. But yeah, the end is in sight. I hope you can see the kind of that kind of balance between production and efficiency is in there, which hopefully for you guys is kind of addressing the brief and kind of what you're hoping to get out of it, and we'll try. I mean, next week I think we have another play party and possibly another build submission, so you'll see more progress again next week with more final art assets and that type of thing. But yeah, thanks very much for listening. This turned out to be a wee bit longer than I thought, but just gonna explaining where we are, our kind of thought process, and the work that's been going into it. But hopefully this has been enlightening. Any questions at all or any feedback, just shoot us an email. And I guess we'll try and arrange to meet for another meeting, maybe a week this coming Monday, something like that, depending on your availability. But yeah, thank you very much.